We're basically swimming in a sea of data these days. And charts, they're supposed to be our life rafts. But here's the thing. Sometimes they guide us to clarity, and other times, they just steer us straight into confusion. So let's figure out how to tell the difference, how to spot the lies and find the real truth hiding in all that data. All right, take a look at these two charts right here. Believe it or not, they're showing the exact same data. The one on the left with that flashy 3D look, it's kind of a mess, right? Which bar is actually taller? It's really hard to tell. Your brain has to work overtime just to figure it out. Now look at the one on the right. It's flat, it's simple, and boom, you get the point instantly.
So, what's the deal? Why does one chart tell a story in a split second while the other one just gives you a headache? That is the big question we're going to tackle, because believe it or not, there are actual rules to this game.
And that leads us right into our quest for clarity. To make sense of this world of data, we need a map, right? A compass. We need some solid principles to guide us away from the confusing stuff and towards real understanding.
Every good quest needs a mentor, right? A wise guide who knows all the secrets. And for our journey into data visualization, our mentor is a total pioneer who literally wrote the book on how to do this right. And here he is, Edward Tufte. This guy is a statistician who came up with this really powerful way of thinking about charts and graphs. Tufte basically gave us the language to talk about what makes a visualization good, and maybe more importantly, what makes one just bad. Okay, so we've got our guide. Now it's time to learn how to fight data's dark arts. We're going to use Tufte's principles like our secret weapons to spot and defeat the common villains of data visualization.
So, our first enemy has a great name, the lie factor. The idea is actually super simple. The change you see in the chart should be exactly proportional to the change in the actual numbers. So if the data doubles, the picture should double, not triple, not go up by 10 times. The perfect, most honest score you can get is a lie factor of 1.
Okay, this is a fantastic example of a high lie factor. This chart shows the percentage of doctors in family practice going down over time. Now, that percentage, that's a one-dimensional number. But what did the chart do? It used two-dimensional pictures of doctors to show it. So as the height of the doctor shrinks, the width shrinks too, which means the total area of that little doctor picture shrinks way, way faster than the data. It completely exaggerates the decline.
So what's the lie factor on that shrinking doctor chart? Get this, a whopping 2.8. That means the visual lie is almost 3 times bigger than the actual story in the data. That's not a little white lie. That's a serious deception.
All right, next up is a really common villain, scale distortion. And the rule to beat this one is so simple. If you are making a bar chart, you have got to start the baseline at 0. Always. Why? Because our eyes compare the length of the bars. If one bar is twice as long, we naturally assume the number is twice as big. And that only works if you start counting from 0. Check out this classic example. This chart is showing job growth, but look really closely at that vertical axis. It doesn't start at 0. It starts at 2,500. This is called a truncated axis, and it makes what is actually a pretty modest increase look like this monumental surge. The visual jump is huge, but the real percentage increase, it's actually pretty small. And finally, we meet the most common villain of them all, chart junk. Chart junk is all that extra visual fluff, the fancy 3D effects, the distracting pictures, the super heavy grid lines, all the stuff that isn't actually data. Tufte's rule here is dead simple. If it's not data, it's probably junk. Get rid of it.
So let's look at a couple of big offenders. First up, this one called monstrous costs. I mean, look at it. The data on campaign spending has been turned into the teeth of a monster. It's creative, I'll give it that, but the monster itself is pure chart junk. It's totally distracting and makes comparing the values, which is the whole point of the chart, incredibly difficult. And here's another one for you. A line chart showing the price of diamonds has been all bent and twisted to fit the outline of a woman in a top hat. I mean, come on. The story isn't in the data anymore. It's completely lost in a sea of unnecessary distracting ink. But now, look what happens when we slay the chart junk. On the left, you've got the monster. On the right, a simple, clean bar chart using the exact same data. Which one tells the story of rising campaign costs better? Yeah, it's not even a contest, is it? The clarity is just immediate. Okay, so we've learned how to spot the bad guys, right? The lie factor, scale distortion, chart junk. We've got it. But just being a good critic isn't the real goal here. The real power comes from learning how to build something good ourselves.
And this is maybe the most important secret of all. Before you even think about picking a chart type, before you worry about colors or fonts, you have to know what question you're trying to answer. This is the key. This is what shifts you from just decorating data to actually communicating a real insight.
And that brings us perfectly to our next section, a chart for every story. See, once you have your question nailed down, choosing the right chart becomes so much easier. It's really just about matching the right tool to the right job. Okay, so here's a super simple guide. If your question is about comparing different categories, like, say, sales by product, a bar chart is what you want. If you're asking about how something has changed over time, like monthly revenue, a line chart is perfect. Exploring the relationship between two different numbers, like maybe discounts and profit, that's a job for a scatter plot. Trying to see how your data is spread out, like the size of customer orders, you'll want a histogram. And if you're showing parts of a whole, like market share, a pie chart can work, but just be careful with those. And hey, let's clear up a super common point of confusion: histograms versus bar charts. They look alike, I know, but they do totally different jobs. Bar charts compare separate categories, things like sales figures for different countries. Notice how the bars are separate. Histograms, on the other hand, show the distribution of continuous numbers, like the heights of everyone in a room. The bars touch each other to show that the scale is continuous. All right, now for the grand finale, visualizing with wisdom. Because when you combine a really clear question with the right kind of chart and a real commitment to being honest, you can create something truly powerful, a visualization that doesn't just show data, but actually reveals a hidden truth.
This is one of Tufte's all-time favorite examples. It's Etienne Jules Murray's train schedule from way back in 1885. It plots train stations on the vertical axis against time on the horizontal. And what's so genius about it is that the slope of each line instantly tells you the speed of the train. You can literally see when and where trains pass each other. It's a work of art that turns a boring old timetable into this rich visual story.
And this map literally changed the world. Back in 1854, a doctor named John Snow was trying to figure out how cholera was spreading in London. So he did something really simple. He put a dot on a map for every single death. And the pattern was just undeniable. The deaths were all clustered around one single water pump on Broad Street. So he went there, he had the handle removed from the pump, and the outbreak stopped. This chart didn't just tell a story, it actually saved lives. So there you have it. We've seen the villains and the heroes of data visualization. We've learned the principles that lead to clarity and the incredible power of starting with a good question. Which leaves us with just one final question, and this one's for you. Your data has a story to tell. So, how are you going to tell it?